Super excited about this episode. Um, I think vibe hacking or vibe coding has been such a trendy topic in the world of marketing recently. Um, and I've noticed from some conversations I've had previously, some kind of misrepresentation of really what it can be. And so, super excited to have you on to help kind of understand a little bit more about what vibe coding is, what the potential is, and maybe walk through some live builds here.
Yeah, awesome. Super happy to be here. Always good to chat with you, Will.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. Um,
Do you want to give a little background on yourself? Kind of what you're working on these days.
yeah, absolutely. So what's up, everyone? My name is Matt. I am a two-time entrepreneur, founder, creative strategist, and a brand innovation consultant that is really into the vibe coding movement, really into AI, but just all throughout my career, I've worked at agencies. I've started different types of communities, tech products, and whatnot. But the through line for me has kind of always been I'm fascinated by emerging technology and specifically how we could leverage emerging technology to bring people together, create campaigns that like actually connect emotionally and meaningfully with people. I think people tend to believe that when new scary technology emerges, that it pushes us away from our humanity. And I guess the type of work that I do is sort of try and prove the opposite, that we can leverage this technology and that it's important to do that, to leverage this technology in a way that brings us together and kind of shows the human side and potential of this technology instead.
Which really should be the essence of advertising and marketing in general, right? Like it should be human to human connection. I'm curious your take because I know we both did the big ad agency world. What's the contrast in your mind? Like where do you see how do those big agencies play into this space? Or do you think this is just like the future and those big agencies are going to be, left in the dust?
Yeah, that's a good question. Really kind of jumping into it. I think so first of all, I'm kind of fascinated by the responses I've seen from a lot of people in the agency world because um, it seems to me like almost every agency founder or CEO that I've spoken to is really scared and threatened by AI, but most of those people don't understand it very well.
Mhm.
Which to me, it's like if you feel like this disruptive technology is such a threat, which I believe it is, um, if it were me, I'd want to dive headfirst into this world and understand better. So what I've noticed is there's a surprisingly slow kind of adoption into just understanding like the fundamentals of this technology in a way that allows you to create experiences in a way that allows you to weaponize it really to build more impactful campaigns or products for brands. And so I think that's kind of interesting. I believe that the agentic movement, as that gets a lot stronger, Asian technology is going to be really fascinating for these holding companies to see how they respond. I would be very nervous if I were, one of the big holding companies because their whole model is built on, headcount and scale and agents kind of destroy and just demolish that whole advantage they have. So I think that the next wave, it may take a little bit, but the sort of next generation of great agencies aren't going to have 1,000 people. They're going to have 100 people or 10 people and like 100 agents and like a really freaking strong point of view.
Yeah.
What about
Yeah,
you?
definitely. I mean, it kind of flips the whole, like you said, it flips the whole agency model on its head. And now that people can get a lot more done with less people, there's some serious challenges that come up. And I think vibe coding and all of and agents and all of that drive towards the same thing where there's just rapid production of you have an idea and you can execute it so much quicker. Um,
Yeah, totally. It's really like I lead innovation right now for a for a venture called Myosin, which is essentially a decentralized agency for the crypto blockchain world, which is a lot of buzzwords crammed into one thing. But I was just chatting with one of the founders, Simon, about this and how the ability vibe coding has made it possible to create products and tools and like interactive experiences in the same amount of time that it used to take us to generate content or social posts. So
Yeah.
it's very interesting, yeah, to kind of see that come to fruition.
So for the viewers who maybe are not so familiar with vibe coding yet, and maybe view it as a joke because it kind of did start as a Twitter joke, um, what is the cultural movement that made vibe coding this real thing that we're now giving a discussion on?
Yeah, so I think first of all, the disconnect I think is most people look at vibe coding and they see it as essentially using AI to create tech products. And when an outsider hears that description, they view it as this is a thing for developers. If I'm not an engineer, that's probably not for me. Really, what it is it's essentially this cultural movement that's been birthed because of the fact that for the first time in history now, if you have an idea or a vision or a point of view on some sort of creative concept or regardless, just some sort of product that you want to build that's technical, the barrier to entry between idea and vision versus shipping a product has been destroyed. So it's really like this kind of outburst of creativity, experimentation, and just like you know production of really amazing, diverse kind of outputs that all kind of ladder back to this movement. And it's got its own kind of language. It has its own sort of like scene and insider kind of culture, and it's really like embracing like flows kind of over like the typical frameworks, and kind of celebrating the idea that now um, visions for technical products are no longer restricted to people who have the training and the expertise in coding.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it was Greg Eisenberg who said that most startups die in Figma and most ideas rot in Notion. And I
Yeah,
think this is, in my eyes, this is the key to all of that. And for the ideas people like ourselves, our background in creative strategy, there were so many ideas that passed through our head that we were not able to bring into life that now all of a sudden is. And I think the that feeling almost actually becomes overwhelming at times where there's too many ideas and not enough time to execute. What, in your mind, what makes a good idea? What's something that's worth bringing, um, you know, through the vibe coding process? Or are there ideas that should just live and die in Notion?
yeah. So it's funny. So a couple things to break down on that front. I think that the most important thing, first and foremost, like with this topic, is if you're interested in vibe coding or if you are trying to make those decisions, what I recommend is build a network of other vibe coders because ultimately, once you start tapping into the kind of scene, there's already an established culture of experimentation and shipping and whatnot.
Mhm.
So when you're kind of deciding if you should build something or if you have something built and you're deciding if you should ship it, um, that process becomes a lot easier when you could just throw it out to like your network in the scene and start getting some immediate feedback, right? Like building in public is a really core part of this culture, and it's sort of a disconnect, I guess, from the way brands typically have operated with having like a very kind of guarded process leading up to
Mhm.
you know the release of their content. Yeah, I mean the I think it depends on kind of the what your goals are. The thing that I'm most interested in, you alluded to in the beginning of this, is this concept of vibe hacking, which is a combination of culture hacking and vibe coding. And the idea behind that for me uh, is that whereas for vibe coding, you're building products sometimes for yourself, sometimes like for a consumer, like vibe hacking is essentially building products to infiltrate a scene, right? And like the way we kind of operate today is around, um, we take a lot of our identity from the subcultures or the sort of communities that we identify with. And there's a lot of reasons for that we can go into. But I tend to specialize in vibe coding and building products that allow brands or allow myself to essentially showcase through a tool or an experience or product, that brand or that myself really understands and gets and belongs to that scene, which allows you to be adopted into that world. And so, like, from that perspective, understanding what to build, like, to be honest, Reddit has been a tremendous like R&D factory for me. Every subculture has a subreddit, and if you spend a little time on that subreddit, you can kind of pick up what are the pain points, or even just like what's something that I could build and place in here that can allow me to contribute and participate in these conversations. And so, like, I guess if you're just vibe coding for yourself, my recommendation is just finish it and ship it. If you're trying to vibe hack essentially on behalf of a brand or whatnot, then I think you kind of figure out what the right thing is to build once you understand the nuances, pain points, and the conversations that are happening.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. I think I want to dive into that process a little bit because it's nuanced, and like you've already touched on, looking for culture in Reddit, which is so impactful. Um, for vibe hacking specifically, can you give an example of something that you've seen recently, maybe you've built or like a brand has done, exceptionally well?
Yeah, sure. I'll give it I guess kind of a strange one for LinkedIn, but we'll demonstrate this pretty well.
Yeah.
So for me personally, as I entered this world, I was essentially vibe coding in isolation by myself. I didn't know anyone in this world at all, and I wanted to get my name out there in the developer community, and kind of tap into that world and build relationships. So there's a subreddit called Programmer Humor, right? It's one of the most popular subreddits for developers, and it's basically just like where people post memes and inside jokes and connect with each other and whatnot. And so I looked into it for a bit and kind of understood the culture. And unsurprisingly, it's a little risque. People appreciate, they appreciate and respect a little bit of edge. So I quickly whipped up. Took me about an hour. This microsite. It was called agentporn.ai, and the premise of it was essentially like it was designed like a porn website, like some porn website, but the content was essentially developer porn, meaning like really satisfying videos of like code being compiled or just like different kind of nuanced little things that like only developers would appreciate. And part of I think what was successful about it was that if you're not a developer and you go on the site, you are probably going to be incredibly confused, right?
Yeah.
And that's like a part of like vibe hacking means in order to vibe hack something that resonates with a specific group, then it can't resonate with everyone. Because if it resonates with everyone, then it has no intrinsic meaning to that subculture. Like subcultures are built in a large part around the fact that not everyone is a part of it. That's what connects them. So this site basically like lots of little Easter eggs, like NSFW, the W stood for waterfalls, and just like little kind of Easter eggs in it. And then I threw it up on the developer or programmer humor site. Went to bed, woke up the next morning, and I had I think around 2,500 email signups for this. Like over a dozen developers in my inbox asking if we were hiring, and number one post on the platform. So I think just structurally, that is a good use. It's a great case study, even though I wouldn't make a fake porn website. The process I think is a really good one to follow because I wouldn't have understood the idea wouldn't have come to me had I not put in the time to investigate the nuances of that culture on the subreddit. Uh, and ultimately, it's like that's yeah. I think that really demonstrates the principles.
Yeah, I think it encapsulates you know the engineering and the product individuals who build product for users and solving a pain point and a problem that, someone is experiencing. And this is now building something that contributes or amplifies the culture of this like sub niche that already exists.
Totally. Yeah, absolutely. Another just very quick example.
Yeah.
The very first thing I built was for, obviously through my asset, I work in the crypto space. And so I built a quick microsite for founders in the space that was called the Grandma Challenge, where
Mhm.
if you go on, it's a mini game. There's like a sweet grandma, and the game has one objective, which is explain your crypto project to grandma. And if you do, then you win. You get a little certificate you could reshare. And if you don't, and use jargon or buzzwords or whatever, then she gets increasingly more anxious and eventually calls her mom. And it's like that experience, once again, is like it's rooted in an AI couldn't come up with it, that concept. It can code
Right.
it, but it's rooted in a human insight, which is that every crypto founder has a family outside of crypto, and they have to constantly explain what the hell they're doing, and so kind of it connects on a human level through that.
So, how, as a brand or a founder of an early stage company, how can you uncover those cultural signals? Like, how do you find those insights that, could lead to some kind of development? Because what I think this bigger picture, what's so interesting about this is this idea of like vibe hacking or, making something that's rooted in culture is actually a really effective marketing strategy for some of these companies. Bigger brands, it's a way to kind of stay relevant. But then I could see a lot of these turning into kind of like growth hacking strategies for, earlier stage companies as well. So if you're a brand or a founder and you're like, yeah, this sounds cool, but like what next? What's that process in your eyes?
Yeah, that's a great question because ultimately, we're talking about AI and vibe coding a lot, but like in large part, this is a broader trend that extends beyond the technology, which is this shift towards um, be marketing to a persona, right? Like we both been in the agency world, and it's like you work with a huge Unilever, and it's like, well, this is Sally. She's a mom, and she loves her Sunday nights out with the girl. That stuff is going to the wayside, I believe.
Hmm.
Yeah, and being replaced by these scenes. I think the broader trend behind that is like we look at we look at the algorithm, the social networks that we spend all of our days on, and the kind of algorithm prisons that we're all in. And so we're kind of all living in these different realities. Like we're the monoculture era is ending.
Right.
People music talk about this all the time, right? There's far less superstars and there's way more kind of niche stars. Um, and so I think it's really like this. It's a trend that goes beyond AI. What vibe coding allows you to do is number one is to participate in those cultures as a brand in a way that is creative and interactive and deeper than just kind of you know replying on a social post.
Yeah.
And then secondly, I think what the opportunity is a lot of those cultures live digitally. So to me, the first step to go about it is I think you need to be kind of like a method actor in this sense. You need to like dive into those communities and like really pay attention and study the way that they interact, what the inside jokes are, what are the pain points that are disguised as inside jokes, and like what do they value, what do they find funny, what do they, you'll usually find a brand on there or someone trying to promote their product that the community will, whether it's Reddit or whether it's in like, you know, different like groups or whatnot. Like you'll usually find those brands who do it poorly and get rejected, and you can
Hmm.
learn from that. Um, but I think it's like it's all out there in public, and while the quantitative data is important still, obviously, the ability to develop cultural instincts comes from like immersing yourself in those places.
Which isn't that novel. I think like the word authenticity is, is beaten over our heads in the advertising world and in the marketing world, and like it's no different than that. But I think the ability to then produce something that fits into that culture has just become exceptionally more easy and more timely and contextual. And also, like, we're in this really weird period where most people still haven't processed the fact that you can bring these products to life very quickly, which allows for more timely builds, um, and things like that. And so, I think it's really cool. Kind of, we get caught up, to your point, like we get caught up with like AI and all these buzzwords. But if you take a step back, it's just further developing these insights that we already know, and these playbooks that we've already built. They're just becoming more granular and more niche over time.
Totally. It's just at the end of it's a great sort of microcosm of the dialogue that's happening about AI in general, which is like people are saying that it's destroying the need for human skills and it's going to take all of our jobs and automate everything. But like taking vibe hacking for example, that it's impossible for an AI to come to these outputs on their own because AI is great at understanding what's happened previously. It's great at scraping and kind of executing, but it can't place cultural bets, can't forecast sort of where the world is going, and so that skill still comes from just like great strategic thinking in general.
Right. Yeah, and I think this is something I talk about all the time, but as we continue to reach product parity where, AI is great at coding. It's like everyone can build these products really quickly. You can copy each other's features and bring that to life a lot quicker. Where the one thing that AI won't be able to replace are these being, tapping into these human insights, being able to be creative with, oh, like creating this, not safe for work, porn style website for developers. Um, AI is not coming up with that, but yet they tap into this cultural nuance that um, is so unique and so specific. And when applied, appropriately, you really hone into that niche,
Yeah.
100%.
Did you ever see the interview that Rick Rubin gave about vibe coding?
No, I don't believe so.
It was like shockingly insightful,
Yeah.
honestly, because he's become, so for those who don't know, Rick Rubin, legendary music producer, kind of has like a he's some of the most iconic albums of the last several decades. He's the kind of I guess the main producer behind, but he has become a enormous advocate for vibe coding, which to many people seems random. He just put out a book about it. And he
Yeah.
was being interviewed by Andreessen Horowitz, and he talked about how when he got a start, it was the beginning of the punk kind of movement. And what he saw with that was that, like, before the punk rock movement, music and being um, a respected musician required like classical training, required money, required resources. And then with this movement, people like Joey Ramone, who could come into the picture, who only knew a couple of chords, but because he had such a powerful point of view, it gave him an outlet to then express that point of view and to kind of shape culture. His analogy was that that's basically what's happening with this sort of vibe coding movement. Now, really, what it is like it's democratizing the ability for people who have a unique, strong point of view to then express that and kind of bring that to life. But ultimately, so I think for creatives and for people who work in creative departments, like it's a mental shift away from being afraid of this stuff to thinking of it as how can I use this as a new canvas to bring to life, ideas that may have been ambitious or just not even plausible previously.
Yeah. Yeah, Rick Rubin's book, "The Creative Act of Being," is definitely a good read for anyone out there listening. It's definitely top notch, and Yeah, the vibe coding book or PDF he published was in partnership with Claude. That was definitely a great read as well. So really insightful and a really cool way to think about how this idea of being an artist and a producer of things in the world. It's a really good ideology that everyone should definitely read. Um, Matt, can we build something or take a look at something?
Yeah. I think we should let's try to put some of this stuff to the test right now.
Yeah.
So I guess like let's see. I think we should. What I was thinking is we pick a either like a product or a brand that someone, maybe even someone who's listening, could suggest, or a subculture or scene that we want to target, and like let's. I think we should get like, let's get a brief together, and then we'll go through the process of creating something.
Okay. Yeah, I just looked. I don't know if anyone's commented yet. Any good recommendations of places we maybe will start?
Yeah, let's see. Why don't we think of a
Should we use AI to do some do some brainstorming?
let's do that. Okay, cool. So how do we do it? Do you want to share your screen or you want me to share mine?
Yeah, if you could pull it up on your side, that'd be great.
Let me figure out. Hey.
I did a quick Claude search and we got the cozy tech movement, the anti tech hustle culture, trad wife techies. I kind of like that one.
Trad wife deckies. Okay. I like
Um, I don't know how much of a subculture these already exist on subreddits though yet.
let's see. Yeah, we're not gonna have time to do the subreddit thing, so I'm gonna show a different kind of tactic from this. Why don't we do like the agency world since that's kind of what we were talking
Yeah,
about
let's do it.
earlier. All right, so we want to do something for the agency world. So let me pull up a.
Well, while you're pulling that up, something that has been super interesting having other discussions with you is the idea of building kind of knowledge bases around different individuals, but that also could apply to subcultures. Um, Being able, I wonder if there's a way to kind of scrape Reddit and bring that knowledge into a database to be able to start talking and interacting with it.
Wait, so I was ITing myself here. Say that one more time.
All good. We've talked about like building knowledge bases based off of like an individual, like Steve Jobs, for instance. But I wonder if there's a way to scrape Reddit to pull in that data of a subculture to then be able to kind of interact and let the real conversations be that guiding. You can
So
kind of interact with it, ask it questions, and see where
yes.
that goes.
So let me show you guys something real quick before we jump in.
Yeah,
Actually, can you see my screen? Okay.
yeah.
So I this is a site that I whipped up for myself. Actually, I use this a lot, and it's for vibe writing. I know there's a lot of vibe stuff to keep track of here, but just it's
Everything's vibes.
so basically, what I do here, scroll all the way down here, but these are just different kind of prompt templates to get me started. Um,
Mhm.
and it's not so this part here, I actually have quick. I do this a lot with my copy, right? So I'll write something, and then I will, if I want it to be like any of these personalities, then I'll just copy and paste these. You know, if I want it to sound more like Steve Jobs, then I just copy and paste this feedback, right?
That's
Um,
awesome.
but going back to Claude, so what I'm going to use for this one is you and I are both big fans of Mischief, right?
Yeah.
And so I actually created a persona that is basically a Mischief bot, right? And so you guys can take a look at all my crazy bots here. But
Yeah, Mischief brand there, yeah.
yep, there we go. So with different with different basically like it is trained on the different like stuff that Mischief is like built and the tone and the kind of personality. And so sometimes what I'll do is other than when I, don't have time to spend, a couple days spying on a subreddit is I'll just do a brainstorming session with a bot like this. So we'll do this in a second. But like this process here is like essentially like as a creative, I like collaborating and kind of throwing ideas back and forth. And this allows me to basically build the personas that I want to do that with. So so as a culture hacking expert, give me 10 killer viral ideas that for a project I can vibe code quickly, which would add agency world. Do a quick audit of cultural nuances, insider signals, and relevant stories. Each one provide a Go agency subreddit or generate showcasing a clever build. Whatever. All right, close enough. So just to kind of go over really quickly the anatomy of this, always good to start with this part here. Essentially, it's called role play, which I don't know if you guys are back to the NSFW stuff, but essentially, if you frame up these kind of discussions, even within a persona, by telling it who they should be, then what it does in the back end is it'll essentially go out and think through like what's the mental model of that person, and then it'll address the prompt sort of through the practices and frameworks of that identity you give it. So we do that, giving it these details, and then obviously always ending with a goal. So let's see what we got.
And it's also polling, and what a lot of this is based on is that data that you had in your knowledge base already. So it's using that as a reference point as it builds this out. And then Matt, do you ever use any of the Claude connectors? Like, do they have a Reddit scraper that you can connect to? I know you can connect to a bunch of different apps, but do you ever use those?
That's a great question. I've been connected to like certain things in my drive, but I don't do that. I think what I do now as that's sort of is an alternative is I'm using the GPT agent a lot. Have you tried that out yet? The new agent?
Yeah, I've been a fan of Manus for a minute, which does those kind of like agentic steps, but I've heard really good things about OpenAI's version.
Yeah, it's awesome. And what I'll do, we're probably not gonna have time for this now, but once you build you can use it to basically go in and do multi-step like research and stuff.
Yeah.
Are you still there? Okay. So typically, you take what I would do, which we don't have time for, but what I would do is go through them, find the one, or maybe it's a couple that you like, and then unpack it. Don't just use it like a vending machine, right? Like use it more like a sparring partner. So challenge it, ask it like how can you elevate it, ask it if they can open up on a certain tension that's interesting to you, right? So we would typically do that until you kind of landed on a really. So pretend we all did that. What are you thinking?
Kind of like I was first gravitated towards brief.wtf. The amount of broad generic briefs that I've seen in my RFP days.
Yes, love that. Okay, cool. Okay, so that one. Sorry, I'm taking a look at it now. So that one is so it basically translates. That's pretty good. That's not bad actually. So translate actual client briefs into what they really mean. So we want something never been done before. So I like that one because it's to me the idea behind that is like it's something you would share in.
Yeah.
So I would say to it. So again, typically I would say something like that seems to be an interesting opportunity there. Can we build sharing mechanisms? And I just want to like emphasize this stuff a little bit before we jump in because I think this is where we get the good stuff. That's when I would ask follow-up questions like that. Like, can you like building a sharing mechanism here to share within the office, or what are ways that we can adding viral hooks into this and whatnot.
It's a little bit hard to hear you, Matt, but the idea is to challenge it a little bit more.
Yes. Challenge it and then look for things that are interesting. So, for example, like this feels like something that when I get a client brief, I would, I would plug this into this brief.wtf and then share the honest brief with my team, right? So it'd be kind of internal virality with this. So maybe asking it as a follow up, like, what are ways to add viral or kind of shareable hooks that encourage that behavior, or sort of viral hooks that are specific to the nuances an, of an agency process, right? So anyway, we don't have time for that necessarily now, but let's not. You want to just go into the how we'd actually build this?
Yeah, let's go into the build. Are you building in Claude? Are you using Cursor? What's your tech stack look like?
Got you. Okay, so for something like this, I would use personally. I like Base 44.
Okay.
You ever have you tried that before?
I have Base 44 is great. I'm a Replit fan myself, but no particular reason then I think it's just the one that I continued my trial with.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. So let's do this. Why don't you ask it? So next thing I would say is, as a UX designer, develop the layout for this product. Then my trick would be, right? Then I would tag at the end of it. I would say, make sure you consult with the culture hacker who came up with the idea, to ensure that it's designed around the nuance community of this subculture, right? So you can have the now I've moved from the culture hacker from the initial to the UX designer, but you can essentially, it's a little hack that allows them to take the work that they produce and then kind of run it by that. And then,
Yeah, this is a cool hack where you give it a persona and then have those two multiple personas speaking to each other.
yeah, totally. Yeah. Again, not like I think I always find gets a lot of great results like that. Another thing that you could do if you have time and it's kind of fun is, if you have Claude and ChatGPT, take the answer that Claude gives, paste it into ChatGPT, and say, this is what Claude came up with. Like, see if you could do any better, and then
Hmm.
just keep sending them back and forth. Strangely enough, when you make them compete, they actually produce really good results for some
Like
reason.
that. A little competition.
Yes. Okay. So where are we at now?
So we've got a layout, we've got a UX layout strategy.
Cool. Okay. So then I think what I would do, the last thing I would do here is I would say, okay, take now structure this website, this project, and the layout into a perfectly constructed prompt. Let's use lovable. So I think it's also the. It doesn't really matter. I think you touched on this. Yeah, perfect. Sorry. So perfectly constructed prompt for
I'm gonna use Replit so I can share it on my end.
cool for Replit to develop. Cool. Yeah. I mean, honestly, they're all great, and I agree with you, man. It's like
Yeah,
whatever you.
it's hard for me to find significant differences between them at this point. Um,
What I like about Base 44, just for context, is that I believe that Claude is the best writer of
yeah.
all of these, the persona. Base 44 has an integration with Claude, so you can
Mm,
basically, and it also has built-in email and a built-in database.
that is really powerful. Yeah.
But
Okay, so just to recap, we've pulled in these cultural ideas based off of a knowledge base that Matt already had. But if you were replicating this, you would use Reddit or something to understand that subculture, brainstorm some ideas, maybe spend a little bit more time going back and forth with, um, challenging the idea a little bit. And then we just worked through some UX and kind of design stylistic ideas with Claude. And now we're here in Replit or you could use base 44, lovable, and we're copying and pasting in that description here. The nice thing is, it formats that all in there, and so we can just say plan and build this project. One of the things, and I'm not sure if the other ones do this as well, but kind of it maps out a plan um,
Mhm.
before and make sure that you're aligned. And then it also kind of helps you develop and iterate on features moving forward, or like it makes suggestions of things that you can add.
Yeah, it's a good one. A couple just quick tips on this part. Like, first of all, usually it's good to ask it before it codes to like present its plan.
Hmm.
Most of these platforms have a feature where you can chat with it rather than and the default is you when you type something it starts to code, but there's a chat feature and I recommend aligning with it first. And
Yeah.
then lastly, just a quick tip is a lot of people get stuck kind of the 99-yard line. You'll see as we go through it. And after a while, if you're trying to get it to tweak one quick thing and it keeps screwing up or like it's not quite getting it, then the hack that I recommend is just take the project, clone it, and with a new database or without the memory and just start over. So
Yeah.
you're gonna waste time at that point. You're going back and forth, so you're gonna waste time.
Yeah. So it's mapped out the plan here. It's suggesting different features which you can remove if you don't think you like them. And then you see it's starting to build in the background, and here's the preview, but you have the idea, or you have the ability to approve it or edit it. So I think, for time's sake, we'll go ahead and just approve that plan. So it's starting to build this out.
Totally. And I think just generally as well, as you do this, like let's say the copy isn't right or the experience isn't right or it's, the design isn't right or whatnot. Don't be afraid to talk to ChatGPT or Claude and just brain dump even and say like, this project here is too corporate, blah, blah. I would like it to look kind of like this, but sort of like that and then say to it like, help me come up with the right structure to give feedback to this, so that it can act on it. So if you're
Yeah.
not a great prompt engineer, you can meta prompt, which is essentially to ask AI how to prompt the
Right.
AI.
Right. Got it. So meta prompting is when you ask the AI to prompt or tell you how to prompt better.
Yes, correct. So
I
it's
like
like
that.
give me the prompt, the perfect prompt, so that I can get Replit to change the branding to look more, appealing to Gen Alpha or whatever.
Yeah. That's great. All right, cool. So look, we've got this area to upload a document. Um, it's going to give a translation. It's going to give it some ratings here, buzzword toxicity levels. We have this built-in ability to create something that's shareable. And then we've got this kind of like social component where it's sharing across different teams to be able to do that. And I think look, I think I'm able to drop in a brief to see if this works.
I was going to generate a
Oh, looks like we're still in build mode.
yeah.
I mean,
It's funny how impatient you get. I
yeah, you're like
before
build
I
my
used to be like, oh wow, you're to the developers I work with, oh you're going to get that.
yeah. The development time has become extremely fast, and our patience still gets smaller and smaller. I mean, I bet we could post this in like an advertising subreddit and get a bunch of hits already. It's crazy how, again, I think the key differentiator here is like we're building something. Yes, it has functionality, but this idea of vibe hacking or culture hacking is you're creating something so hyper specific and relevant to this subculture, um, that hopefully becomes shareable or something that creates a cultural moment around that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And again, like to me, most of the ways that I would probably improve this would be to add in little cultural nuances. Thinking through essentially like what are little Easter eggs you could place into this that shows people in the agency world that you get it. Like whether it's, you know, certain language that a client would use when talk, just like again, things that outsiders wouldn't understand are the best sort of examples of this because it shows that you are an insider and that you belong and get it.
While this is finishing building, I really like that idea. I want to jump back into Claude and see if this is something that we can prompt it to identify. And I do have web research on, so maybe it can do some searching there. Stock photo roulette could be really interesting.
Yeah, I wonder if we can. I'm gonna ask you to type in one more thing. Maybe ask it to say as a try. Let's try this again. As a parody expert with deep, nuanced knowledge, the pet peeves that agencies have around client and suggest Easter eggs or subtle updates to the experience that will funny and resonant to
Funny and what was the last part?
and resonant to agency. So let's see what happens.
My favorite thing about one of my favorite things about chat or Claude is it's very forgiving with typos.
Yeah, totally. But you'll see, like to me, as a creative, like what I've trained my brain to do in this process is to think, like anytime that the thought pops in my head, like man, it would be great to have this person sitting with me as a
Yeah.
client, you know. What do you get there?
Sometimes I really like also asking it to explain its thought process to me or like its rationale.
Yeah, me too. Absolutely. The strategic rationale. Also interesting also to ask it to, you know, I'm working with
Hmm.
Python, which is essentially like an AI
Mm.
founders like build like and the interesting challenge for us was that ChatGPT and Claude, they're programmed to essentially like, you know, go with the sort of consensus, whereas great strategy is about digging deep, finding these tensions, flipping the things that we kind of, you know, all. It's interesting to see what happens when you challenge it explicitly to find it to build
Yeah.
even contrarianism.
And and with that and what you're saying is like again it's really simple and I'll keep explaining it, but I still don't see enough people doing it, but is actually putting in building up that knowledge base. Not necessarily of I think a lot of people build knowledge bases around, like, a company, right? If you're at, Apple and you put in all your company info into that, that's a great step 1, but I think what you're saying and what kind of brings you to that next level is building knowledge bases based around a specific, job function or a specific sub niche or subculture where it's way more localized and more contextual to that. And I think in the in the explanation of what you've built at HiveMind is understanding how these Web3 companies and how crypto companies can really leverage these different marketing tactics, which is hugely valuable.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it's like ultimately all of us have strengths, even when we're doing our own jobs, and all of us have blind spots.
Right.
And so just thinking about like how can I create a team of collaborators and advisors, you know, with different skill sets or perspectives or mental models that complement mine that I
Right.
can use as like my personal team to
Yeah.
collaborate with, brainstorm with, you know, to bring out the best qualities that I have.
Yeah.
Will, I have to run to another meeting, unfortunately.
No worries. Thanks for jumping on. I'm gonna wrap this up with testing this live, and then I'll drop the link for anyone who wants to experiment with it.
Awesome. Best of luck, and yeah, thanks for having me on. This was a lot of fun.
Yeah, of course, Matt. Have a good one.
Okay, you too.
Aaron, we're gonna test this in real time. And let's see. I've got an RFP here, uploading a PDF. Let's see if this works. If not, I might need to do some debugging. What they don't tell you about vibe coding is it always requires a little bit of debugging. All right, well, let's see. Looks like the PDF uploaded, but information was not extracted. And this is what Matt was touching on about being able to talk to whatever vibe coding software that you use. And so, it's going to think, it says, all right, you're right. There's no storage, but the text extraction isn't helping or isn't working. Found the issue. All right, we're going to give this one more second and then see if there are any changes. I'm going to go back on view if there's anyone in the chat who has any questions today. Man, I love these. I love doing these lives. I think, being able to get audience participation is so valuable. But for anyone who, is tuning in after, go to events.gotcatalyst.com and you can see all our previous recordings. Actually, we vibe coded that site. So this is a full vibe coded. This is a full vibe coded website that I built off of my domain that links to my Notion to pull these. You can see our upcoming sessions. That's happening now. We have another great session next week with the head of growth marketing at Slash, the fintech startup, and have a special guest coming on in a couple of weeks, Maria, who is the former head of social media A16Z, or I guess Andreessen Horowitz as a whole. She's going to come in and give some techniques and tips about thinking about social content. So this whole thing was vibe coded. I can show you the replit file there, but you can see we have our past sessions here. Try to extract the discussion points, the takeaways, kind of those related resources that we talk about. So feel free to check that out if you want to, dive a little bit deeper. This is still running. Looks like it's doing a little debugging. We'll give it a few minutes here. All right, looks like we got an all errors fixed. Great. Let's see if this works. Upload the PDF. All right, we're getting another error here. I wonder if we can paste in the text as just a way to wrap up this demo. Let's see. Oh, it's going to use an OpenAI key. So what's really cool about vibe coding is, yes, we developed this idea in Claude and we, asked it to create like a PRD or something of the equivalent that we then brought into Replit. But we can actually connect to an API. So like I'm connecting to my OpenAI API key here. So it can actually perform additional functions. You can also have it trigger webhooks. This is getting a little bit more technical, but here, essentially, whenever you enter your email and hit sign me up, that triggers a webhook that goes into an AI automation flow that I built in Relay. So really powerful if you're unsure about, okay, we have this front end, but how do we make it continue to function? You think about like, all these things that you might want to do. But if you're unsure about how to actually build that, most of the time you can ask in this chat bot here in this chat section to actually perform some tasks, and if you connect to your API key to OpenAI, it will be able to do that. This error here is actually just my I've exceeded my quota for OpenAI. That's interesting. Let's see if we can we use my Claude API key? All right, it's asking for some Anthropic. I'm gonna drop in my key here. Hopefully this doesn't show to you guys. Nope, we got some privacy there. That's great. So we're just trying a different model. You can see that you can use AI, or you can use OpenAI. You can use Claude. You can connect to Perplexity. You can connect pretty much anything here, just like you would if you were a developer and engineer. I'm determined to get this working because I want to post this. I'm going to post it in the subreddit and see how that performs. And then you have an end-to-end about, really how to do that research, and how to brainstorm how to come up with one of these ideas and bring it to market. And you can see, we had a little bit of a technical hiccup, but this really only took us about a half hour to get from idea that is rooted in a piece of culture to, essentially fully functional landing page or interactive element that creates such a more interesting experience for someone. Totally, that is built into some culture. Looks like it's still trying to process with OpenAI. Change it to translate this nonsense using chat or Anthropic API. We'll do this one more time and we will see. We also lost our sharing modal. Something I like about Replit is you can stack requests, so you can see it was loading. Then I asked it, I told it that we have this queue of messages. Really interesting to see, as you kind of think of ideas, you can just keep stacking those. Just checking the live stream again. We got a couple people watching. If you guys have any questions along the way, feel free to drop in. We are building this. Awesome. All right, so let's get that RFP in here again. Translate it. There we go. Looks like we've got some functionality running. All right, we got a little JSON error. You can see what I'm doing is trying something, seeing what errors we get, and then, this is doing some debugging for us already, but essentially we are, kind of just feeding it back to itself, and it solves its own problems. I'm just here as the orchestrator. All right, we got it. Hell yeah. Buzzwords, warning signs, urgency flags. 8 out of 10 detected. Can we screenshot? Client bingo card. No, it's finding buzzwords. Look at that. We hit bingo twice. It's finding buzzwords in that brief and it's calling them out. So again, not the most functional thing, but what we've built here is something that is tied directly to a subculture. And if you get this right, and if you consistently nail, your ability to understand that subculture and create something that is valuable or fun or entertaining to them, that is how you build these cultural moments. And just to, tie this back to the beginning, we researched these subcultures on Reddit. We looked through that information to find topics that are already having conversations. We then fed that information into a knowledge base on Claude. We brainstormed with Claude Sonnet to figure out what some fun, viral, very shareable pieces of something that we can vibe code, a piece of content, an interactive component like we've built. We challenged it. We asked it to go layers deeper. We asked it to base it in research. We talked about how to set up the context of how it should think. Then we asked it to set up a file that we can paste into Replit. That's essentially a PRD or a product requirement document. We fed that into Replit and it built this on first pass. We had to do a couple, debugging once we started connecting to our OpenAI API key. And then what we would do from here, from a marketing perspective, is take this and bring it back into that subreddit where we found this idea and this inspiration from and share it. And that's how you contribute to culture. And that's how you can leverage this as a creative marketing or growth hacking tactic. Now, there are some ways where you can use this to maybe capture some information. Maybe if this was my ICP that I'm going after, these agency employees, we could, to unlock this share function, maybe you have to enter in your email or something. right? There's clever and creative ways where you can make something that's entertaining for your ICP, but then leverage it for your own marketing or virality moment. So we're way over time here. Thank you for those who stayed a little bit later. I am going to drop this in the description below if you're watching on YouTube. And as always, all of our live sessions live on events.gotcatalyst.com. And in each one of these, we have our key takeaways and our chapter breakdowns. And I'll add a link to this website as well, just so it is available for everyone. So thank you, everyone. Thank you, Matt, for joining. Really appreciate it. And we'll see you next week.